Movements of Art. Part 1. Introduction. Learning objectives. Definition of art movements. Introduction. Are there any differences when an individual watches a movie sports with artworks? The answer is none. That is the reason why watching a specific movie sport or real sport needs understanding the rules of the game. The same thing with art. There are rules to follow for as long as they agree to the general theory of art. In other words, the artist's response to the guidelines depends on how he or she will respond to it, that is, style. Hence, this topic includes the various art movements throughout the ages or period, genre, and style. Learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students would be able to understand the importance of the various movements and genre of art, discuss the various movements of art according to period or era, apply the style if applicable of the various movements of arts. What is art movement? According to Artifactory.com, art movements are the collective titles that are given to artworks, which share the same artistic ideals, style, technical approach, or time frame. For example, the Gothic Revival architecture. There is no fixed rule that determines what constitutes an art movement. The artists associated with one movement may adhere to strict guiding principles, whereas those who belong to another may have little in common. Art movements are simply a historical convenience for grouping together artists of a certain period or style so that they may be understood within a specific context. For example, High Renaissance. Art movements are usually named retrospectively by art critics or historians, and their titles are often witty or sarcastic nicknames pulled from a bad review. According to Alison Stanfield, a retrospective is an exhibition that shows off the entire of an artist's career. For example, the artist's retrospective, an excerpt from Virginia Folkstead, discovers insights into her life work by using a visual timeline. Grouping artists of similar interests or styles into art movements is mainly a characteristic of Western art. Art movements are essentially a 20th century development when there was a greater variety of styles than at any other period in the history of art. Part 2. Art, throughout the ages. Art history timeline. The Stone Age. According to Robert Adams et al., the Stone Age was the creation and use of stone tools over 3.3 million years ago. The three separate periods. The Paleolithic period. Humans were food gatherers. The Mesolithic period. The new way of hunting, fishing, and food gathering. The Neolithic period. The question on why the Earth is warm? That is, melting of the great ice. Stone Age characteristics. This cave painting can be found in Montignac, France by James Lee Portfolio. The historical events. Ice Age ends. New Stone Age and first permanent settlements. Chief artist and major work. Lassacre paintings. A section of the Halls of the Bulls. Mesopotamian period. According to Seton H. F. Lloyd, the contributory factors to the character of Mesopotamian art and architecture are socio-political, affairs of state, and natural environment. An artist reconstruction of a ziggurat. The Mesopotamian architecture is a massive structure taking the form of a terrace-step pyramid F successively receding stories or levels, with a shrine or temple at the summit. Mesopotamian characteristics. Warrior art and narration in stone relief. Monte Alban, South Platform, Stela 2. Mesopotamian chief artist and major work. Standard of Ur. Ishtar Gate reconstruction. Mesopotamian historical events. Sumerians invent writing. Hammurabi writes his law code. Abraham founds monotheism. Egyptian period. Pyramids of Giza, in Cairo, Egypt. The pyramids of Egypt are considered some of the most magnificent man-made structures in history, and they play a major role in ancient Egyptian society. The pyramids of Egypt are still remaining to show the country's power and its past. /VT pitch. Egyptian art is based on afterlife for the sake of their rulers, and to show pride, or respect for their gods, or who they worshipped. The Egyptians were obsessed with immorality. Their paintings were mainly consistent of hieroglyphics and they tell stories of the deceased. For example, the paper batik painting of Queen Nefertari. Today, we know about the Egyptian tombs and statues that represent life like the Imhotep, the Great Pyramids, and etc. The mummy remain of Imhotep, with a message, his name will live forever. The Greek and Hellenistic period. Greek idealism is based on balance and perfect proportions. Roman copy of original by Polycletus, Doryphoros the spear-bearer. The architectural order. Tuscan, Ionic, Doric, Corinthian, and Composite. They are the capital styles for the 5 major orders of classical architecture. Sculptures and the architectural places show excellent flow and proportions. For example, the Laocoon and his sons, 1st century BCE. They also portray emphasis by the way everything is formed perfectly and all of the clean lines, for example, Boethus of Chalcedon, Boy with Goose, on the 2nd century BCE. The Roman period. Carved and modeled portraits. The allegorical scene from the Augustan Rapaces. In 13th BCE, a high point of the state Greco-Roman style. They stressed the idea of physical perfection of the human figure. Anatomy. For example, the statue of Augustus von Prima Porta. The Roman artworks were made for the wealthy people. Very few of the Roman artists have been known to us because they were not a respected class. Indian, Chinese, and Japanese period. The arts of the East show a cultural and aesthetic richness that goes over 4 millennia and originates from a vast region. Cultural tradition, religious beliefs, features of geography, the written word, respect for nature, and the role of man in the universe, all influence the making of art in Asia. Whether they are powerful ritual objects or sacred sculptures, exquisite textiles, delicate porcelain vessels, or vast landscapes on scrolls and screens. Works of Chinese and Japanese art inspire viewers with their beauty, and provide valuable clues to understanding the cultures that created them. For example, the Hirshige birth of Buddha. Another example, Gu Kaixi, a Chinese painter, born in circa 344, and died in circa 406, in Wuxi, China. Another example, the Katsushika Hokusai, Ijiri in Suruga province. The Byzantine and Islamic period. The sculptures of portrait busts and full-length statues of religious figures represented as commemorative. The Byzantine mosaic is known for having stiff people with large eyes. The figures have bright, rich colors and the backgrounds are usually gold-colored. Most Byzantine mosaics are on the walls or churches, and they have Jesus with dark features and almost an angry expression. Another example portrays the Emperor Justinian mosaic, San Vitelli, Ravenna, around 546 to 56 AD. Another example is the door of Miletus and Anthemius of Tralles for Emperor Justinian, Hagia Sophia, Istanbul, 532 to 37 AD. The Islamic carving, the fine architectural detail at the Alhambra Palace in southern Spain. All of the Byzantine and Islamic artworks do not pertain to religion, but also certain territories. Thus, decorations are based on calligraphy, vegetal patterns, geometric patterns, and figural representation. The Middle Ages. One of the characteristics of the Middle Ages art, and architectural design, is the Celtic Germanic art, which combined with ornamental interlacing patterns. For example, the Martebo stone from the Swedish island of Gotland in the Baltic Sea. Some beautiful stones have been found there that show spirals, animal figures, and Celtic-style triskelions. This one shows a sunwheel with a cross in the middle. Geometric and abstract arts. There was also use of wood and stone in Celtic art. For example, castles and cathedrals. The Cathedral Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Lincoln. According to Christopher McFadden, Gothic architecture is a pan-European style that lasted between the mid-12th century and the 16th century. It is usually characterized as a style of masonry building that makes heavy use of cavernous spaces, with walls broken up by overlaid tracery. For example, the stunningly beautiful Cologne Cathedral. Some typical architectural features. Rib vaults. Flying buttresses. Pointed Gothic arches. Stained glass window were also common,